Hello. As we've seen previously from Federation in 1901 throughout the early 20th century, successive governments in Australia implemented schemes to ensure it remained a British Australia. With the White Australia policy restricting immigration and assisted passage initiatives encouraging Brits to immigrate to sunny Australia, in 1945, 90% of Australia's small population shared a British heritage. While it was participation in war that had been foundational to the establishment of a unique Australian identity within the Anglosphere, it was also Australia's experience of war that set the scene for the development of the culturally diverse society that we see today. Australia's experience in World War II, where it was discovered we couldn't necessarily rely on a great power protector, led to the idea that we needed to build a large military in order to ensure we could better protect ourselves. It was decided Australia needed to electrify, industrialise and expand its defences across the continent. To do this, we needed workers. At the same time, the war had left millions of people displaced and living in refugee camps in Europe. So, to increase the workforce for defence and development, in 1947, Prime Minister Ben Chifley approved an urgent recruitment program. He said, "We must populate Australia as rapidly as we can before someone else decides to populate it for us." The slogan, "Populate or Perish," was developed by Immigration Minister Arthur Caldwell to help the population accept such a large migrant intake. Under the Populate or Perish policy, 2 million migrants arrived in Australia from 1945 to 1965. There were lots of Italians and Greeks to begin, then others from the Baltic states. They were people who couldn't return home in war-torn Europe, and still others fleeing communist expansion. Migrants were classified as labourers for men and domestics for women, no matter what their qualifications were. Australian officials scoured Europe to select industrial workers for the Snowy hydroelectric scheme and agricultural labourers for the sugarcane industry in far north Queensland. And still, many more migrants remained in the cities, finding work in factories and as tradesmen. Caldwell called them New Australians and encouraged the population to accept them into Australian society. In order to be accepted, expectation was that new Australians would assimilate into the prevailing British Australian culture. They should become Australian as quickly as possible. They are expected to only speak English. They are expected to dress and act like Anglo-Australians. They are expected to find homes all around Australia, in country towns and in the city suburbs. Children went to local schools and were expected to grow up and find Australian-born husbands and wives. British migrants could become citizens after 1 year. All other migrants had to wait 5 years. This was meant they could not vote. Australia was to remain monocultural, with Australians of Anglo heritage remaining economically, politically and culturally dominant. But of course, culture and traditions persisted, particularly when it came to family and food. Although the official government policy was that migrants should assimilate into Australia's Anglo-Celtic culture, many celebrated their origins through membership of clubs, sporting and religious organisations. For some, such community organisations made a huge difference in overcoming a sense of isolation. For others, it came when they had their own homes and families and could grow familiar fruits and vegetables and eat traditional foods. As more and more people migrated from all over Europe, they brought their cultural traditions with them. While these changed as they integrated into the prevailing British Australian culture, so too did Australian culture change as greater exposure to different cultural traditions provided opportunities to adapt and adopt. Australians started drinking coffee as well as tea. They developed a taste for wine as well as beer, and the Aussie version of spaghetti bolognese, spag bowl, became Australia's favourite home-cooked meal. Migrant cultures were gradually accepted into mainstream Australia, but these migrant cultures were exclusively European cultures. The White Australia policy still prevailed. It would be around for three-quarters of a century until it was finally laid to rest. As the world changed, Australia finally began to change along with it. We'll look at the next chapter in the development of a diverse Australia in my next podcast. I'm Diane Colman. I'll see you then.